This is a time of great opportunity for BHP. The resources we produce are essential to the energy transition and global economic growth. Our products are fundamental to the way we live now and into the future. Now more than ever, we need to provide the world the resources it needs responsibly and sustainably. Imagine what we can achieve if we continue to think big.
Diversity inclusion is really vital because we want to have a workplace and to be working in workplaces with our clients that represent the broader Australian community. So whether it's Indigenous, people with disability, pride, gender equity, then it needs to be encompassing. I think that this is an amazing opportunity to showcase some great innovative and impactful initiatives across the country, and I'm quite happy to share the learnings and the program with any companies that would be interested to talk to me.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Tara Diamond, the Director of Operations at the Australian Resources and Energy Group, AMA, and thanks so much to IMARC for the opportunity to discuss this very relevant theme. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land of which I'm speaking to you from today, both the Turrbal and the Yugara people, and I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which you are on, paying respects to elders past, present and emerging. The theme for today's discussion is how COVID-19 has reshaped people and culture-related strategies and deliverables within mining and resources. And we have an esteemed panel of industry leaders joining us to deliver insights on how the global health pandemic has impacted and transformed the resources and energy industry. This is a 30-minute session, so I'll get straight into it by introducing our panel before asking questions on your behalf. Firstly, it's my pleasure to introduce Stuart Matthews, Executive Vice President, Australasia at Goldfields, an international mining executive with over 28 years of experience, having worked in Australia, Mexico, New Zealand. Stuart joined Goldfields in 2013 and oversees their large portfolio of Australian gold mines, including St Ives, Agnew, Granny Smith and the Gruyere JV. Welcome, Stuart. It's also my pleasure to introduce Sam Retallack, the Head of People and Culture at IGO, a growing mining and exploration company with a strategic focus on the metals critical to energy storage and renewable energy. Sam has over 25 years in senior management, human resources and operational roles across a range of sectors. Welcome, Sam, also. And last but not least, it's a pleasure to introduce Tony Ottaviano, Program Director, Operations Systems and Improvement at BHP. Tony is a highly respected commercial and operational executive with over 25 years leading global business teams across Australia, UK, Brazil, West Africa and Asia. Tony has a track record of successfully transforming businesses through workplace design and improving efficiency and processes. It's really wonderful to have such a diverse and globally experienced panel, and I'm looking really forward to hearing from you. So I'm going to start things off by asking each of the group to set the scene by giving us an overview of how COVID-19 has impacted their business and operations, particularly from a workplace and workforce perspective, and how perhaps it's changed the culture of their roles. So I'll start with you, Stuart. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tara. I know in Goldfields we had to move quickly. This was a very quickly emerging issue, and we had to make decisions very quickly at the top. And we actually managed this whole crisis by forming a crisis management team. And we've managed it in that way right through to today, actually, with a short list of people from our regional leadership team. We also had to very quickly make decisions about our people, and we recognised very quickly that our people were our number one asset, and we needed to deliver a message which resonated with that message and show full support for our workforce. We felt that by giving a message early that we as a company were going to support 100% retention of our employees across the world on full entitlements and full rates of pay right through the pandemic. We made that obligation very early and very quickly, and we kept talking about that message, and we also recognised that health and well-being was going to be a real issue, and we really put in place a lot of the mechanisms to help on mental health, and recognising that everyone has different pressure points around the situation around the pandemic, right through to today. So we had to put a lot of support mechanisms in place, and I think what we did is we got very social very early with a lot of video messaging right across the workplace.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Stuart. That's a fantastic snapshot and a great point to leave us off on. We might pick that up about getting social and what it's meant in terms of technology. But Sam, I'd love to ask you to share your current reflections on how the pandemic's really been reshaping and affecting IGO.
Thanks, Tara. Look, I think I'd start by saying, many of the things that Stuart has mentioned, we addressed through the course of the first couple of months as well. We brought together a multidisciplinary COVID response team very early and tried to stay in front of all of that. I guess as well as we possibly could. It's changing so quickly all the time. But it's been interesting. It's from a personal point of view, it's changed some of my priorities, but it's probably not our broader focus, because we're a company that has been very focused on culture and being very, I guess, specific about the culture that we want to create over a number of years. And one of the things, and we've made some choices and had a process by which that helps us deliver our strategy. One of the things that we found through the beginning stages of this pandemic was it actually helped to really, I guess, define and kind of embed that culture even more, if that's possible. But we knew that people were faced with a whole lot of uncertainty and ambiguity, and that they broadly had lost quite a lot of control of their what they saw of their life and their job and a whole range of things. So we did things that tried to reduce the stress on people, just in many ways, like what Stuart has said. Obviously health and safety is always a focus, and that was one of the number one priorities. But we brought in things like a special type of leave called COVID leave, and we gave them an extra 20 days of leave a year, so that in that faced with that ambiguity, they would be able to access leave that they may or may not have had in the bank at that time. We'd encourage flexible working arrangements for a while, and in the 18 months prior, we had enabled that across the business and made the kind of the tech available for people to do that. So we were able to send them home and not worry about that ambiguity in the early stages. Mental health obviously was a focus, and we put in place a range of additional programs that supported remote mental health, because obviously we were no longer in contact with people on a day-to-day, face-to-face basis. And I think one of the other things that we worked really, really hard on was communication. And so we were having very, very regular communication sessions, be it online or be it over the phone, but certainly communicating with our people in the beginning. Look, if not a daily basis, every other day, in a very structured way to help them deal with the ambiguity of the situation, and provide them with a framework for them to make sense of, what that external world was doing and how that related to our internal world. But certainly an interesting year.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Sam, for sharing all of that. I've made some notes to come back and probe with some more questions. So thanks so much. And over to you now, Tony. Do you mind giving everyone an insight into how you and BHP and your teams have really looked at this challenge in 2020 of COVID-19?
Thanks, Tara, and hi to Stuart and Sam. Pleasure to be on the panel with you. I think, like Sam said, there was a number of points that Stuart made that we also would like to make as well. So if I was to summarise our approach, and I'll talk about me personally in a minute, but our approach is best summarised as put your people and communities first, trust your systems and processes, and empower your leaders. And if I look at, if I take each of those in order, I mean, the communities and putting our people first, it is our duty to put those emphasis on those two key elements. And we did that in a number of ways. We had to take the stress and the anxiety out by saying to people, you're safe at work, but your job's secure. The second thing is, we would commit to them and we would provide them the best possible communications and the best possible care that we could financially and as a company muster. The third bit is around our communities. We needed to support our key stakeholders. And we did that in a number of ways. We set up the Vital Resources Fund. We committed to 1,500 additional employees by recruiting them. We had a number of ways of tackling the support, but there's also an expectation of society that a company of our scale can lean in and provide support more broadly in the community. On the systems and processes, we're the first to admit that from the outside looking in, we do come across bureaucratic. But it's only in times of these crises do you realise how powerful your systems and processes are. That will steer the day. And we're able to quickly identify, and Stuart brought up an excellent point, speed is everything in this sort of crisis. We were able to identify our high-risk employees and then take them out of the concern. Right? We were able to quickly identify who was doing FIFO externally outside of WA and deal with that cohort quickly. And then finally, the power of our leaders. The one thing, when we asked our leaders afterwards, what made the difference? They said, well, we didn't get people from Perth coming up. So all the sort of the central office people stayed out of our way and we will be able to focus on what mattered. Right? And there's a learning in there, so we've taken that on. And finally, what's it meant for me? Well, besides my family staying healthy, it's been a gift that I've been able to see them more often and not do as much travel as I normally do. So that's what it meant for me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tony. And I'm going to pick up on those three things as well as the impact on reduced travel as well. But I'll start the questions with you, Stuart. Being the CEO of and leading a mining organisation, you must have been dealing with such a huge range and a broad range of considerations, and we've touched on many of them. Can I ask you from a leadership perspective, how did you manage those competing priorities in terms of, triaging those range of considerations that we've all just touched on?
Well, I managed it. We actually removed all our employees from our office in Perth, and we also mandated that there would be no travel to our sites, unless absolutely urgent. But for 3 months, no one visited our sites from Perth. So that gave encouragement for our sites. They knew that their support system was actually having to work remotely, but they weren't able to, touch base face-to-face on a site basis. And we actually found that there was probably a lot of non-essential travel going on. So we've actually taken a lot of that business, a lot of that activity out of our business now. I think one of the pressure points was that we had to ask very quickly people to do extended rosters, okay, and make changes to their, and we said it was temporary and for a period of time, and we honoured that. So we're asking people for some upheaval in their family life and their arrangements that they have with their family and their children, and any travel arrangements. So there was a big imposition. So every 3 days at least, I was sending video messages to all of our people, so we get that consistency of messaging, and really reaching out to those people that we did remove the at-risk employees from site, that they knew that they were fully supported. And we actually had a process where we would socialise with those people all the time, so they didn't feel like they're forgotten and that their jobs are at risk, because they just absolutely weren't. We were just protecting them, and their business. I did set up a Ask Your EVP special email, so anyone could ask me a question and I would socialise with them one-on-one as well. So, and also giving a bit of personal perspective on of my own pressure points, and that was really, I think that's important because everyone's got issues around this. I definitely had some, and I socialised that with people. So you try and give a bit of yourself that you're going through similar things that other people are as well. So that really helped. So I think we were very clear in our messaging. I think what really helped us though was that that decisive messaging, especially from the West Australian government, about how they were going to manage the crisis, because we got ourselves perfectly aligned, and we know that both state and federal governments provided that absolute support for the resources industry, as long as we did the right behaviours, carried out the right behaviours at airports, right? We put in all sorts of processes as far as over-recruiting in critical roles, and the roles that weren't critical, we removed them from the site. So we removed impediments to people just getting on with our business, and I think that really helped.
Yeah, fantastic, Stuart. I'm going to ask a quick follow-up question, and it's probably a difficult question because many of you have touched on the reduction in travel and the reduction of people of going to site, and perhaps the ongoing learnings of how to manage our workforces in that regard. But Stuart, how have you found productivity and efficiency within your teams over that period? Have you been surprised, or is there some learnings out of that in terms of how productive and engaged the team's been?
Well, I think early on it was an absolute distraction because we didn't know where this pandemic was heading, in a sense, and it was changing. So it was a bit of a distraction. So it was a concern for us on the safety front. We thought there was some risk there because of the distractions. So we actually have just introduced a courageous safety leadership program across our company, and we've used that forum to really help and manage the mental health and wellbeing side of that. And it did stall initially in the first sort of month because of the distraction of the pandemic. We've picked it up rapidly since, and it's been an absolute fantastic forum for people airing their views and their concerns and stresses around this whole thing. And that's how we've been able to manage it. So it's gone just beyond safety. It's now actually core to our business, people speaking up and about issues, and I think that's really assisted us.
Great. Thanks so much for that, and for allowing me that follow-up question, because it is a difficult one, and for your absolute honesty in sharing with us. Sam, I want to pick up the topic of engagement with you, and Stuart touched on the distractions and the uncertainty. How has IGO, and specifically your role in IGO, really focused on maintaining employee engagement at really times of heightened uncertainty?
Yeah, thanks, Tara. It strikes me as completely fascinating how similar our responses have been across three quite different companies. But from an engagement point of view, I mean, we run at fairly high levels of engagement in this organisation. And interestingly, we had done an engagement survey just before and got the results just before the real effects of this event were being felt. And we always and that was quite high in terms of number of people engaged in the organisation. We always talk about communication as being important, and certainly all three of us have spoken about it so far. But there's, the magnitude of this crisis really kind of distilled and, I guess, gave us a laser focus in terms of the communication and the styles that we had to have. And we really, to keep people engaged, and the others have touched on it, we really had to have people feeling the fact that it would be all right. We can't control what's happening in the external environment, but we certainly can control what we're doing within IGO. And I've said it, mentioned it previously, we really needed, to give people an connection and not have them distracted on a day-to-day basis. We really had to reconnect their purpose and our company purpose with what was going on. Interestingly, we felt that engagement levels actually went up over the beginning part, well, certainly through the course of this year, simply because we've been quite direct in some of the forms of communication that we've had. And, you know, we're a company that co-creates lots of parts of the strategy in our business, but this was a time to keep people together where we really needed to be quite specific. So communication was a really big thing, and being specific. We even did at the very beginning a COVID support survey. So we surveyed all of our people specifically on what they actually required to keep them, you know, focused and not distracted in the bit, and how we could support and care for them. And then we used the results of that survey to communicate and to formulate I guess the processes that we put in place. But I think the other really, really important thing was that we were real. We tried to keep it real. Communicate with people that they are, you know, they should, as Stuart was saying, express their feelings, and we certainly were real about expressing ours. We also knew that many of our employees have young families, or have families at home, or care for older people in their family, and tried to help people manage their expectations around what they could realistically achieve at work, with all of those things happening at home if they were working from home. On site, we tried to take away, very much like Stuart and Tony have spoken about, all the distractions. You know, we certainly cut down the number of people going to site, and we made sure that, you know, from an engagement point of view, people were focused on what they needed to do. We did things like, you know, check in and all of those kinds of things, but it was really that laser focus on good communication and keeping it real that I think gave people a sense of it would be all right in the end.
Wonderful. And of course, we're, you know, whilst border restrictions are changing here in Australia, many of countries surrounding us and elsewhere in the world are still very much in the thick of it. And, you know, remains to be seen what emerges in the next few months. But Tony, I want to bring you in on the questions. And well before the pandemic emerged, our industry had really focused on changing work design and future work design. And BHP, you know, here in Australia is really famous for that, particularly in your making your aims around diversity and inclusion as an organisation, and looking at different types of how innovation can be realised through improving work design and systems. How do you think COVID-19 has impacted the way we as an industry, or even your experience, how we think about work design?
Yeah, Tara, I do want to answer that question by opening on a similar front to Stuart and Sam, and say it's all about comms. It's all about being authentic and genuine. So the comms piece, maybe the only difference we did, I'm not sure whether Sam and Stuart's organisations did this, is it was important that the leaders, the CEOs, right up front with the messaging and making it regular. But there was also another angle where we provided scientific comms, where we had our chief health and safety officer and our sort of company doctor providing the opportunity to talk to the teams around the scientific elements of COVID, because we simply didn't want to replay what was already in the press. And in actual fact, we wanted to break some of the myths and fake news, as one particular leader calls it, that was out there that was creating anxiety. So I think that there was an important piece around putting our chief medical officer right up front, where he could answer questions specifically around the scientific elements of COVID. But then in terms of our flexible working arrangements, you're right, we have been a first mover in this event, in this area. And I think it's important to say it just didn't happen during COVID. There was significant investment we've made over the last 5 years in terms of pushing the inclusion and diversity piece, pushing the flexible work piece in order to get better results in an inclusion and diversity. And it doesn't come for free. You need to commit both leadership effort and time, and also technology. And what we've found in COVID, again, a lot of the myths that things couldn't be done remotely had to be done face to face, you know that we've been able to make do. Now, post-COVID, and do we get people back into work? I mean, that's a challenge we're currently pushing through. but flexible work has been taken to another level. And when you look at all the collaboration tools that we now have on the market and utilising them to their full effect, you can get very productive without having to be face-to-face. And the opportunity that's given people that either have to do long commutes in the morning to get to work or long commutes home, we've found those individuals and those team members have been far more productive now that we can facilitate the working from home in the way that we have.
Yeah, wonderful. And such a good and important point to bring into this discussion is around flexible work and how, you know, fundamental work design in terms of the inherent elements of the work, but also where you get it done as well. So, Tony, thank you so much for those insights as well. I'm going to ask a question for each of our panelists, and we only have 4 minutes to go. So I'll ask everyone to give us a minute answer on this one. We've touched on the topic already in this discussion around workforce mental health and, of course, broader community mental health. But I want to ask each of you your reflections or indeed your insights in terms of, in addition to the amazing things you've shared with us around, you know, being authentic, communication, giving information, particularly scientific and you know, real-time information, what have your organisations or indeed yourselves as leaders done to support the mental health of your people in your organisation? We might go back to you, Stuart, to start.
Yeah, we've actually taken a decision. It's really heightened the decision to modernise our office. It's dated, it's 20 years old. We've made a decision, we're moving, and we're moving to a new environment which is conducive to flexible work going forward. And guess what? We got a surprise. Our people could do it, and they were really good at it. and everything worked pretty seamlessly. So that gave us the impetus that we already had a flexible work policy, putting it in place, and the applications we got, it was pretty easy to make a decision. So we moved forward like that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stuart. Sam, over to you.
Well, interesting, isn't it? Like Stuart, we've actually made a decision to stay where we are. We've had to make the same decision through the course of the pandemic, and you know, for us, it's all about it's mental health and good mental health. It's not just about programs. It's actually about helping people find a connection, and certainly our office space will become a hub for our connection within WA, and we're really going to make sure that that is a place for all people. But I think it's really understanding that concept that humans want to be connected, and finding ways to try and make people be included, and try and, I guess, break down those barriers of isolation. And sometimes that can actually occur even when you're face to face. People can feel like that. So, you know, how do you include, how do you support people? And ultimately, you know, unsurprisingly, good mental health is about leadership and about having leaders in the business who support that and actually, you know, walk the talk and are connected to the people that they work with.
Thanks so much, Sam. Great last point. Tony, there's been a lot of good points, so a hard ask for you to just bring us home on this last question.
And I support everything Stuart and Sam has said. The only piece I would add is, again, going back to this, understanding the science so your leaders can act in the right way. Because let's face it, we are not mental welfare professionals, at least I'm not. So BHP has recruited a specialist in this area to come on board and give us the education we need, give the education to our leaders. And I think the point that Sam made around removing the isolation and staying connected is the critical point. Loneliness is the devil.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. And that's perfect timing, because it brings us to a close on what's been a short but incredibly insightful keynote panel discussion. I'd like to really sincerely thank Stuart, Sam and Tony for participating and being so candid and so being upfront with all of your responses and what you're sharing with us today. Thank you so much for everybody who's joined the session this afternoon, and I look forward to enjoying the rest of IMARC with all of you virtually. Thank you.